Hey guys, Rich here. I finally have the results back for the oil analysis on my 2019 Honda CRF450L. And I apologize, Blackstone Labs got the oil sample a week ago, but they took a full week to analyze it, which they estimate like 2 to 3 days. I don't know if they took their time because they wanted to have someone go through and read my notes and put together some nice comments, given that there's probably not a whole lot of oil analysis that have been sent to them for the 450Ls. But regardless, I have it back and I am pretty excited. And I apologize, by the way. Apparently there's a cricket somewhere here in the garage that's also really interested in these results. And also all over my bench here is I am disassembling and rebuilding this Boxford 500 VSL lathe. I'll have separate videos on this if by chance you're interested, and if you're not, then just don't click them. They'll say Boxford lathe right in the title, so if you're not interested, don't click. But if you are interested in that sort of thing too, I'll be posting up some videos on that. But I know, get to the results, right? Okay, so let me sit down here. This is the document that I got back from Blackstone Laboratories, and I will be posting a PDF of this as well. I'll probably post that up tomorrow on my Pirate Moto website. I'll link that down below and update the doobly-doo down here with a direct link to the PDF. So unless you're watching this on the very night that I'm releasing it, that'll probably already be done. So just go down there and click if you want to look at that. But I do have, you know, kind of a little bit of my own analysis of these numbers, and let's just kind of talk through it. So as a review, I sent my oil in for analysis with 1,000 miles on the clock. Now Honda recommends 600-mile oil change intervals on this bike. Myself, as well as a number of other individuals, think that that is probably a little bit you know, cautionary on Honda's part. Even with the fairly small quantity of oil in this bike, 600 miles still seems pretty short. And I think these results back that up. So you can kind of ignore this column. The reason these numbers are the same is because they only have one result from this unit location. What that means is the way that these analyses work is as I send in future samples for this bike with the same unit ID, which in my case is 19 CRF450L, if it's associated with my client ID, which I removed here, they'll automatically have the previous column so I can see the trends. Universal averages are for other samples that they have had, and the notes here point out that the universal oil averages are based on 580 miles, which would be the factory change. Now, they don't say how many that's based on. That could very well be one other sample, but we do know that whether it's one sample or 10 samples, it's based on an average of 580 miles. So some of the numbers are certainly higher. Aluminum is substantially higher. They have 6 recorded here as universal average. Aluminum is definitely higher at 20, so is iron. Copper is lower, which is unusual. So is lead. Lead didn't read in there at all. Now, some of this might be the different additives that are in the oils as well. I mean, that's the thing that's imperfect here. These universal averages are for any you know, any oils. It's not just other folks that used, is it listed on here? Yes, this is what I use, Castrol Power RS, R44T, 10W40, and they've got their own set of additives, as does any other oil manufacturer. So some of the variances might be based on that. I'm not really sure if they would swing it that far, but that's just something to note. Point is, I don't know that any of this really matters all that much. First of all, none of these numbers are crazy high. And secondly, this is only the second oil change on this bike. So you're gonna expect some of these to be a bit higher than you would see on a bike with, you know, 5,000 miles or more on the clock that has had, you know, more than just, this was the second oil change on this bike. So it only had one oil change prior to this test being run. Again, so if there was only one oil change on the bike, the oil that I had tested was from the second oil change. So there was only that first 500, I think I changed mine at it's like 580 miles or something. So anything that would have come out of the engine from break-in after the 580 miles would be in this oil in this test. And some of these items, and they mentioned this, I printed out a couple documents from their website. So, breaks it out here. This is an example. Wear metals, aluminum, pistons, bearings, cases, heads and blocks, clutch assembly and transmission components of motorcycles. I mean, so keep in mind on a motorcycle with a wet clutch that shares the same oil as the engine, anything that you're wearing off of the clutch is also going to be in these numbers. And I do a fair amount of I'm in the Northeast Pennsylvania. It's a lot of really technical riding out here. It's not like you're on, just double tracks or even single tracks that are, wide open where you can, shoot along at 40 to 60 miles per hour. I'm on a lot of trails where you're doing 5 miles per hour, slipping the clutch, basically nonstop, trying to get around all the sharp rocks sticking out of the ground, over roots, all sorts of stuff like that. So point being, I'm slipping my clutch quite a bit. So I would expect some of whatever that clutch material is to be in these numbers here. But again, I think the most important thing is that none of these numbers are particularly high. Some of them are higher than the averages of other changes that they've tracked, and some of them are lower, but none of them are really high. What I'm more interested in is this section down here, specifically the TBN, and this is total base number. So they have an explanation on this as well. It's not the only thing, but it is one of the leading indicators as to whether you've tried to stretch your oil change too far or not. So they go on to say additives are added to the oil to enhance these functions. The TBN will start out reading in the 6 to 14 range, depending on the oil and whether it's meant for gas or diesel engines. When you first start using the oil, the TBN tends to drop sharply, then it levels out and drops more slowly after that. The lower the TBN reading, the less additive the oil has left. A low TBN test result, meaning very little additive is left, is down around 1.0 or lower. And they do caution that TBN is not the only factor to consider. You want to look at the insolubles in the oil, and any buildup that can become abrasive, which goes back to those numbers at the top of the sheet up here. Again, none of which are exceptionally high. But that it is in its own, looking for, above 1.0, indicative of the oil still being in decent shape. So TBN 5.9, value should be greater than 1. So, I mean, this oil is still at the upper end of the range of where it starts to drop off. And same thing, so the other thing we want to pay attention to is insolubles. This is stuff that's part of during the combustion process. It's basically crap that's getting past the piston rings and living in the oil. And we're at 0.1, and it's saying anything less than 0.6 is what you're looking for. Fuel was the only thing that was a little on the high side, and the technician did make a note. Let's see, we checked back on fuel since 2% is high, but hopefully a cold sample factored into the result. I did run the bike a bit before the oil change, but I might not have run it for quite as long as they recommended, and I definitely didn't, go out and run it. I started it up and I let it idle in the driveway for a little bit before I drained the oil. So I'm not particularly worried about this one, although the next time I change the oil, I probably will try and do it after I've actually ridden the bike. And just catch the oil maybe as the bike is maybe halfway to cooling down. Because that's a fair point. The oil was definitely not at operating temperature when I drained it. It wasn't dead cold, but it was not at operating temperature. And they go on to point out the TBN was strong. The technician's recommendations, try 1,000 miles again. I actually don't think I'm going to do that. I think what I'm going to do is step right up to exactly double the recommended interval, which is 1,200 miles or 1,200 miles. And there is Another YouTube channel, gentleman's name is escaping me right now. He also sent his oil out for analysis, and I think he has closer to that. I want to say he might have had 1,400 miles. I'm sure someone will post down below a link to the actually, I will look up the channel and I will link to it in the description of my video, so you can check that out once he posts that video. I think he sent his out a week ago, so I would guess that he's also going to have a result posted probably within the next couple of days. So again, I mean, I think, I know I've rambled on here for 10.5 minutes. I think the long story short, I am comfortable with the results of this test. I would expect that some of these concentrations will probably drop a little bit in the next oil change, just because the bike should be pretty well broken in at this point on the oil that's in there now after this change. But I think I'm also going to push it to 1,200 miles. I would really love to see if the TBN number stays strong and the insolubles stay fairly low. If they do, and I don't see these numbers go up, I think 1,200 miles is probably going to be my new norm for an oil change, and it might be possible to stretch it even further. I don't know. I don't know why Honda is pushing for 600-mile oil changes on this bike. The only thing I can think of is that they're anticipating that folks are going to buy these bikes and they're going to race them. They're going to use it as a quote-unquote race bike that they can also ride on the street if they want to. And I guess if you get on this thing and you just, motocross track it, for every minute you're riding it, maybe 600 miles or even less is appropriate. But this is indicative of, let's say 70-30, or maybe even 80-20 from miles perspective. Of the 1,000 miles on here, 800 of them probably are, that's a stretch. That's not really true. I'd say it's more like 70-30. I know my annual trip where I ride the Pine Barrens in Jersey is on this oil. And that is a lot of woods riding. So I'd say it's more like 70-30, where about 700 miles were street, 300 were in the woods. And from an hours perspective, it's probably slanted in the other direction. It's probably 70% of the hours of just the engine running are in the woods, with 30% of them on the street. The street is, ripping back and forth on the slab, particularly on that Jersey trip. It's 4 hours the way we go out and 3 hours the path that we come back. So that's quite a few miles of just, fast slab. So, I think that's probably fairly average for a true dual sport rider, someone that's not trailering this bike, someone that's doing a balance of riding this bike to the trail and then doing a bunch of trail, as well as, maybe doing a little commuting on the bike. And this oil change is also me going to work 3 or 4 times on the bike on nice days. So thanks for watching. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. It's what pays for stuff like this. This oil analysis was, I think, $38, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. Maybe it was 40 something. It was less than 50 bucks, but more than 30. I pay for that out of my pocket, and I do make a couple of bucks every once in a while. I got a fairly small channel on YouTube, but your likes and subscribes mean a ton to me. They make this type of stuff possible. So if you're still watching, you're not subscribed, please hit that button. Hit the like as well. And then go on down to the comments, see what other people are saying, and give me your feedback as well. And again, tomorrow I will post a downloadable PDF of this analysis as well. Guys, thanks for watching.